let's begin looking at the material. We're beginning with the levush, and as usual, I'm not going to bother telling you exactly where I draw the sources from, because you have the precise source on the screen, the chapter number and paragraph number that I drew the text from, so you can check my typographical errors. I'm not a great typist. In any event, the levush, written by Rav Mordechai Yafeh. He was the great Talmud, the great disciple of the Ramah, right? The Ramah added the Ashkenaz notes to the Shulchan Aruch, and this is his great disciple, the levush. Let's see what he said. Achar she'amru Hashem hu Elokim. At the very end of Yom Kippur, we say Hashem hu Elokim. With that, Omrim Kaddish Shalem. Then there's a full Kaddish, not a Chatzi Kaddish, not a mourner's Kaddish, but a full Kaddish is recited after that. V'tokim Tekiya Achat. And there's a single blast of the shofar, a Tekiya. A tekiya is not a broken sound, da da da, not a da 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 da. It's a da. That's a tekiya. A single tekiya is sounded after Kaddish. Why? Shehi siman l'siluk hashchina. When the shofar is sounded on Motzei Yom Kippur, that announces to the people that the Shechina, the divine presence, which was with us for the whole of Yom Kippur, is now departing. Mistalekes, the divine presence leaves us at that point. Ole ad l'rakia, and the divine presence returns to the heavens. Matan Torah, and this is exactly parallel to what happened at Matan Torah when the Torah was given at Ma'amad Har Sinai. Dichtiv, it says, when the Torah was given at Har Sinai, Bimshoch HaYovel Hema Ya'alu Bahar. You know, as we learned last week, the Torah was given at Har Sinai. There was special Kedusha in the mountain. The Kedusha of Har Sinai was only temporary, was only during the giving of the Torah. Now, today, archaeologists disagree about exactly where Har Sinai is, but even if we were quite sure that we know where Har Sinai is, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, who cares? There's no Kedusha there anyway nowadays. The Kedusha expired as soon as the Torah was given, but during the period when there was Kedusha in Har Sinai, then it was prohibited for the Jews to approach the mountain. That's called Hagbala. They had to distance themselves from the mountain. Oh, when the shofar sounded at the end of the giving of the Torah, that was a sign that the Kedusha had departed from Mount Sinai, and now the Jews are allowed to climb up there and make a picnic, do whatever you want on Har Sinai. No longer has any Kedusha. Uchtiv, and it also says in the verse, Allah Elokim B'Truah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu arises, departs, ascends, goes away with the blast of the shofar. That's why we blow the shofar on Motzei Yom Kippur, just as Yom Kippur is ending, to indicate that the divine presence, which was with us for the whole of Yom Kippur, is now departed. V'gam, also, Atkiya Siman Simcha V'Nitzuach. There's another reason why we blow the shofar. Blowing the shofar is a sign of simcha. Well, ask any child about this, and a child will be happy to demonstrate that when the child blows the shofar, it's just, an act of simcha. Not only that, but blowing the shofar is an act of nitzuach, victory. Simcha and victory. Why are we sameach as Yom Kippur comes to an end? Because of the nitzuach, because of the victory. What victory? Lomar, this means Nitzachnu et Satan. During the whole of Yom Kippur, there was a battle between the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer HaTov won. By the end of Yom Kippur, we defeated the Satan, we defeated the Yetzer Hara, and that calls for celebration. גם הוא מתערבב בתקיעה זו, שיזכור יום מיתתו, ולא יוכל לקטרג. By blowing the shofar, the Yetzer Hara is defeated. After all, blowing the shofar, among other things, reminds you of your mortality, and therefore you're going to do tshuva and defeat the Yetzer Hara. Ma'arvin oto ata ki ata u'chozer l'shlot aleinu. During the whole of Yom Kippur, we're going to see some sources on this idea a little bit later. The Levush tells us that on Yom Kippur, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, which is a part of all of us, this, another name for that is the Satan, has no power over us. The Yetzer Hara is powerless on Yom Kippur. Oh, the moment Yom Kippur is over, the Yetzer Hara wakes up again and wants to acquire power over us. Blowing the shofar gives us the Yetzer HaTov, gives us a little bit more impetus, a little bit more strength to remember that we have to do tshuva and resist the Yetzer Hara. Harei hayom lo shalat aleinu on Yom Kippur. There was no fear that the Yetzer Hara would prevail. Yom Kippur is a day of great reverence. It's a day of great solemnity. It's a day of great religiosity. It's a day when the Yetzer Hara has no power over us. So the number of reasons for blowing the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur, the list is growing. We do it to indicate that the Shekhinah is departing. We do it to indicate our simcha. And why do we have simcha? Because of our victory over the Yetzer Hara on Yom Kippur. The Ode, another reason. You know, like when you have all these reasons for a minhag, my grandfather always used to say, when you have many reasons for a minhag, probably none of them is the correct one. Usually a minhag, like a halacha, should have a clear, easily understood reason behind it. As soon as the reasons begin to multiply, I get a little bit nervous about. Let's see the new reason. Ki tekiyas hashofar hu siman cherus. Blowing the shofar indicates cherut, freedom, liberty. Up until this time, up until Yom Kippur, our spirituality, our neshama, our soul was enslaved to our bodies, and our bodies overcame our spirituality, and we did sins. But now we have been purified on Yom Kippur, and our souls are at this moment, our spirituality at this moment is pure and free. Gam hakufot nishtacharu meshibud onshan. At this moment, as Yom Kippur is ending, we have been forgiven, we have our atonement, and at this moment we are pure and free of any taint of punishment, and that calls for blowing the shofar in Simcha. Od tam, another reason. Hainu mishum shehu zeichel et kiyas Yovel. Yovel, as we learned last week, Yovel, it comes once every 50 years, the Jubilee year, once every 50 years. Once every 50 years, all the slaves are set free. That's what the Jubilee, that's what Yovel, well, it's one of the things Yovel is all about. There's a lot more to it than that. But one of the key elements of Yovel, one of the key elements of the 50-year cycle is the freedom of the slaves, the liberation of the slaves. Oh, and it's Yom Kippur of the Jubilee year, which was the day of freeing the slaves. And so every Yom Kippur, we remember that. When in the year of the Yovel, there's a whole sequence of blowing the shofar, which is required, just like on Rosh Hashanah, just like exactly the same as on Rosh Hashanah. The shofar is blown on Yom Kippur of the Jubilee year every 50 years, and that is the sign of freedom. That is the sign of liberation of the slaves. When the shofar is sounded on Yom Kippur in the 50-year cycle, that is what frees the slaves. Oh, so we remember that as well by blowing the shofar. That's why we blow the shofar. Well, here's the Lavush, which is pretty late in the Jewish history. We're talking about 17th century. He was a disciple of the Ramah, Reb Moshe Isserles, and he has assembled for us a list of reasons why we blow the shofar just as Yom Kippur is ending. Well, one thing is perfectly clear. The one thing which is obvious and perfectly clear is the minhag, the price. It doesn't say anywhere in the Mishnah to blow the shofar when Yom Kippur is ending. It doesn't say anywhere in the Gemara. There are no sources which require us to do this as a halachic obligation. This is clearly just a minhag, a custom of the people. But you notice that in the days of the Lavush, 17th century, the minhag was firmly in place. Everyone was doing it. Exactly why they were doing it, well, different people have different explanations for why they were doing it, but that they were doing it is perfectly clear and perfectly obvious. Now it seems to me that if we go searching through earlier sources, we can add a few more reasons to why we blow the shofar as Yom Kippur comes to an end. Here's the Shibbolei Aleket, a late Ashkenaz Rishon. He quotes his brother. My brother, Rav Binyamin, wrote as follows: Ma shenachagu litko b'motzei Yom Kippurim, the blowing of the shofar as Yom Kippur draws to an end is because Lefi shofar hu sanigoran liYisrael b'Rosh Hashanah. It's the shofar which defended us. It is the shofar which protected us on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was a Yom HaDin, and well, Baruch Hashem, the din, the psak, the decision of the heavenly court is in our favor. And why were we successful in the Bet Din Shel Mala? Why were we successful in the court case in the heavens on Rosh Hashanah? Largely because of the shofar. It's the mitzvah of shofar which played an important part in defending us, in protecting us. That mitzvah protected us and defended us on Rosh Hashanah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu omed mekisei din, lekisei rachamim. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears that the Jews are performing the mitzvah of blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu rises, stands up from the throne of din, pure justice, and seats himself on the throne of mercy. Oh, and it's the mitzvah of shofar which stimulated the divine mercy, matztikotam bedin, and that's largely why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a favorable psak, a favorable court's decision on Rosh Hashanah. Well, the shofar is largely our defender during the trial of Rosh Hashanah. V'ata, and now, at the end of Yom Kippur, Yotzim Beit Din Zakain, now that we know that we have been acquitted in the heavenly court, Gazar Dinam Nechtam L'Schus, and on Yom Kippur, the favorable judgment, the acquittal of Am Yisrael is sealed and finalized on Yom Kippur. Hasanigor shalahem hu yotzei imahem umashma kolo b'simcha. What happens in an earthly court if you are acquitted in an earthly court? Well, you leave the court together with your lawyer who defended you, and as you're leaving the court, of course, you rejoice together with the lawyer who defended you in the earthly court. Well, it's the same in the heavenly court. If you have two litigants fighting each other in an earthly court, whichever side wins in the earthly court will rejoice together with the lawyer. Similarly, with the heavenly court, since we were acquitted and the acquittal was signed and sealed on Yom Kippur, now as Yom Kippur ends, we rejoice with our defender, the lawyer who protected us and defended us during the divine judgment of Rosh Hashanah. That's the shofar. Another reason why we blow the shofar as Yom Kippur comes to an end. The ode. Another reason, Katav Achi, my brother has another reason why we do it. Tamacher, a different reason. Lefi Masha Matzina B'Pirkei Reb Eliezer, says in the Midrash, Kisha Allah Moshe Rabbeinu lekabel luchot achronim. When Moshe Rabbeinu trudged up to the top of Mount Sinai the second time, it was a steep climb. We went up the second time to get the second giving of the Ten Commandments. Allah b'Rosh Chodesh Elul. It was on Rosh Chodesh Elul that he went up to the top of Mount Sinai. V'yarad basar b'Tishrei. And he came down with the second set of tablets, the second Ten Commandments. He came down on the 10th of Tishrei, 40 days later, on Yom Kippur. It was on Yom Kippur that Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai. V'tziva litkoa ba'al yadov yiriyato. And when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai, they blew the shofar. When he came down from Har Sinai, they blew the shofar to tell all the people, hey, Moshe Rabbeinu's returned. I mean, they had to announce the return of Moshe Rabbeinu. So since they blew the shofar in the wilderness at Ma'amad Har Sinai, when the Torah was being given, since they blew the shofar to announce the descent of Moshe Rabbeinu from the mountain, that was on Yom Kippur. Therefore, we blow the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur to remember that. And therefore, recent generations. This is not a halacha that goes back to the Gaonim. This is not a halacha that goes back to the times of the Gemara. This is not something which has a source in the Mishnah or the verses in the Torah. This is a recent practice which is developed in recent generations. L'tkoa b'leil Rosh Chodesh Elul b'shofar b'motzei Yom Kippurim. That's why we blow the shofar during Elul. That's why we blow the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur, to remember the blowing of the shofar, which happened in earlier days. Well, reason after reason after reason. Let's go one step further. The smog, Sefer Mitzvahs HaGadol, like in yeshivas they call it the smog. The smog was one of the early North African Rishonim. He writes, Nahagu ha'am letkoa kashrak. The custom of the people, not a halacha coming from the Gemara or anything like that, but a custom arising from the practice of the people, was to blow kashrak. The kuf at the beginning means a tkiya, then a shvarim. The resh means a trua, and the final kuf is again a tkiya. The custom was to blow tkiya, shvarim, Trua, Tkiya, da, 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 da. That's what they blew Motzei Yom HaKippurim, as Yom Kippur ended. The Ein Zeichel Yovel has nothing to do with the Jubilee year, like the other rabbis told us a few minutes ago. They're just wrong. It has nothing to do with the Yovel, the Jubilee year. She'im came, because if it did have something to do with the Jubilee year, well, you know, Simkach B'chol Shana, we wouldn't do it every year. We would do it once every 50 years. So he rejects the reason of remembering the freedom, the liberation of the Jubilee year. Va'od, and furthermore, Yom Kippurim atzmo hayadina. The judgment in the divine court came to its conclusion on Yom Kippur. Hachmahi, ve'ein malacha. And blowing the shofar is only a chachma. It's not a malacha. It's only a chachma. It's not a labor. Of course, labor, malacha, lighting fires, sewing, writing. Of course, labor, 39 labors are, of course, prohibited on Yom Kippur as on Shabbos. Well, this year, Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos. It's all the same. But even when Yom Kippur is during the week, the prohibitions of labor, the prohibitions of malacha on Yom Kippur are exactly the same as on Shabbat. Oh, but blowing the shofar is not a malacha. It's only a chachma. And that's why you can do it before Yom Kippur is officially over, even though you're still holding in this intermediary period between sunset and the appearance of the stars, when it's still clearly, definitively, and absolutely prohibited to do any malacha, light a fire, write something down, tie a knot. None of the 39 malachas can be, but this is not a malacha. It's only a chachma. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to have to clarify this idea of the difference between a chachma, which is permitted on Shabbos and Yom Kippur, as opposed to a malacha, which isn't. The exact distinction between them is obviously very important, because we're going to have to know how to apply this rule in other situations where chachma is permitted and malacha is prohibited. So we have to know exactly, precisely how to define which is which. We'll come to this definition in a minute or two. Aliyah Shlomo. Blowing the shofar has nothing to do with Yovel, but Nitkan Mishum de Amrin b'Midrash, the reason we do it, the reason we blow the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur is because it says in the Midrash, B'motza Yom Kippurim, Bat Kol Yotzeit v'Omeret. As Yom Kippur comes to an end, a heavenly voice calls out, Leich echol b'simcha. Go home and have a festive meal. Go home and eat, right? People are fasting all day long. Now, as Yom Kippur comes to an end, heavenly voice calls out, go home and have a festive meal, have a good time. Mipnei she'ein Yom Tov ze mefursam. And since the Yom Tov, since the Chag of Motzei Yom Kippur, since the Yom Tov of the night following Yom Kippur is not well known, most Jews will be happy to give you a list of all the Yamim Tovim. There's Sukkot, there's Shmini Atzeres, there's Pesach, there's Shavuos. Jews are happy to tell you a list of the Yamim Tovim, but most will forget to mention in the list of Yamim Tovim the night after Yom Kippur. That's also a day where we have a night where we have a festive meal. That's why the heavenly voice called out, go home, echol b'simcha lachmecha, go home and have a festive meal. Asubok takana lefarsimo. So we blow the shofar to publicize to the people that now is the time to go home and eat. L'chach tokin kashrak, therefore, we blow these four sounds. Tekiah, ta, shvarim, ta, 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 trua, ta, 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 tekiah, ta. We do the four sounds, tokeah, Maria, tokeah. The blow that the meaning of the shofar blowing is now it's time after Yom Kippur to go home and celebrate and have a festive meal. Okay, and now that's another reason for blowing the shofar. Now, at this point, we have a little discursus at the moment. At this point, I want to now footnote and talk about the difference between Chochmah and Malacha, which clearly has many implications regarding other situations. Ketava Kabbalah is one of my favorite sforim. But back in the 19th century, the author of Ketava Kabbalah, I always get his name confused. He was either Rav Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg from Königsberg or Yaakov Tzvi Königsberg from Mecklenburg. I can never remember. His name was Königsberg and he was from Mecklenburg or the other way around. Wikipedia will tell you the correct name and the place it came from. In any event, back in the 19th century, when he wrote this sefer, you don't know about this. Weird as it might sound, there was in the 18th century something called the Reform Judaism movement, which dismissed the authority of Chazal, dismissed the authority of Torah Shebaal Peh, saying, "Oh, all of these drashot in the Mishnah and Gemara, all the halachas which Chazal learned out of psukim, it's not really the pshat in the psukim. It's not really what the psukim are talking about, and therefore, in the Reform movement, they threw off the authority of these halachas. They rejected the authority of these halachas. Three great rabbis in the 19th century composed svarim to counteract, to argue against this reform theory. There were, number one, the Malbim wrote a commentary on the whole of the Torah, demonstrating verse by verse that all the drashot, all the halachas that Chazal drew out of the psukim truly flow from a clear, direct understanding of the verses. The second great sefer written along these lines is the Torah Tamima by Rav Baruch Epstein was his name. Again, going through the whole of the Chumash, verse by verse, explaining, demonstrating how the drashot of Chazal and the halachot, which they learned from the psukim, truly flow from a clear, simple understanding of the Hebrew text. And the third sefer is the Ketava Kabbalah, which is my favorite. Everyone's entitled to their favorite, I hope. All of these three books are magnificent. They're the three magnificent works, but my favorite is the Ketava Kabbalah. Well, let's see what he has to say on this issue. B'tkiyat shofar, blowing the shofar, we learned a few minutes ago, is merely a chochmah and not an act of labor. Similarly, ridiyat tapat. Similarly, removal of the bread from the oven. Removal of the bread from the oven. Yeah, putting dough into the oven on Shabbat or Yom Kippur is, of course, prohibited. That's cooking, that's baking, that's one of the 39 prohibited labors. But what about taking the baked bread out of the oven? Well, it turns out that there's a rabbinic prohibition. Midrabanan, it's rabbinically prohibited to remove the dough, the baked dough, from the oven. Let me explain to you what's going on here. I live in the Near East, and therefore I have some understanding of Near Eastern culture. Let me share with you one point of Near Eastern culture. Trust me on this, I'm an eyewitness to it. I live in the midst of Near Easterners. Bread in this part of the world, pat in Hebrew, bread, comes in different shapes and forms. There's Near Eastern pocket bread, which they call pita. One of the popular forms of bread is called, in Yerushalayim, called eshtanur. Outside of Yerushalayim, the same style of bread is called lafa. It's a large, round loaf, very, very thin, and very floppy. It's a very floppy, very soft, large, round loaf. And you go to any Near Eastern bakery and ask for esh tanur. Outside of Yerushalayim, the same thing is called lafa, and you can buy delish, absolutely delish. Now, if you watch the baker bake esh tanur, this is the way it's done. You prepare the dough, basically bread dough, no different than ordinary bread dough. You roll out the dough in a large circle, and then you take a pillow and you drape the dough over the pillow. Then you let it rise for a little bit, and then you hold the bottom of the pillow. On top of the pillow is the dough. You stick your hand in to the spherical oven and you push the dough onto the wall or onto the ceiling of the oven and quickly remove your hand and the pillow before you get burned. That's the way the baker does it. Now, you're not allowed to do this on Shabbos, and you're not allowed to do this on Yom Kippur. That's perfectly clear. You're not allowed to bake bread. But what happens, the Gemara asks, what happens if some idiot did this by mistake on Shabbos or Yom Kippur? You wake up for your nap and you're disoriented. You don't know what day it is, and you go bake a eshtanur. I suppose it could happen. I don't know. And as with so many bizarre scenarios in the Gemara, I don't think anyone ever imagined that that the bizarre scenario ever happened or is ever going to happen. But it's still, it's very important to discuss, as we're going to see in a moment, because the bizarre scenario is the perfect framework for understanding a fundamental principle, which then has broad application. You'll understand this in a second. Here goes. Some idiot put the eshtanur, put the lafa, stuck it onto the wall of the oven or the ceiling of the oven, and then went away to the Beis Midrash to learn Torah. Now, at what point in time is that person going to be guilty of having baked bread on Shabbos or Yom Kippur? The answer to this question is straightforward. When the dough crusts over in the oven, when the crust is formed on the dough, that's the moment when the sin of baking has occurred. So here this idiot stuck the dough in the oven and went off to the Beis Midrash to learn Torah. And I happened to be in the kitchen and I noticed what this idiot did. And now the question arises, should I violate Shabbos by performing a rabbinic prohibition of removing the dough from the oven in order to save him, the idiot, from a Torah violation of baking? If I snatch it out of the oven before the crust forms, then there was no act of baking, and I saved that guy from shogeg. He won't have to bring a korban in the Beis Hamikdash. But in order to save him, I am going to have to do an isur. I'm going to have to violate something which is derabbanan because removing the bread from the oven is a chokhmah, the highest paid job in the Near Eastern bakery is the guy who watches, it's always a man, the guy who watches the lafa, who watches the eshtanur baking in the oven and knows when to use tongs to snatch it, to peel it off the wall and take it out the oven. You only get one chance. Well, once you've peeled it off the wall, you cannot stick it back on again to bake further. It has to be removed from the wall or the ceiling at exactly the right moment. This is a chokhmah. This takes time to learn, and he's the highest paid job in the bakery. The guy who removes with the tongs, peels off the laffa from the wall or the ceiling, and well, if he does it too early, it's just not baked through. If he does it too late, it's burned. It has to be done exactly right. Incidentally, if you want to try it at home, well, household ovens won't do it. They don't get hot enough. Household ovens don't get hot enough to do this. You need a special tandoor. Um, it is incorrectly believed. This is a footnote to a footnote. It is incorrectly believed by many people in Yerushalayim that the Yerushalmi term Eish Tanur means fire of the oven, Eish Tanur. But this is incorrect. In Palestinian Arabic, but in Hebrew, bread is lechem. The word lahm in Arabic does not mean bread. The word lahm in Arabic means meat. Beit lechem is understood by the Jews as having something to do with a granary. Beit lahem in Arabic is understood by the Arabs as having something to do with a slaughterhouse. The Arabic word for bread is khubz. That's the proper literary word for bread, khubz. But in Palestinian dialect, it's called aish. So aish tanur is bread of the oven. That's the origin of the expression. Uh, that's the end of the footnote, and there's no particular reason why you have to find it interesting. Some people just skip the footnotes. Okay. The halacha is the bottom line in the Gemara is I am prohibited from violating a rabbinic law, removing the bread from the oven, even to save the other guy from a Torah violation. I'm not allowed to do that. He himself, the guy who put it into the oven, if he's around, he is permitted and encouraged to do a rabbinic violation to save himself from a Torah violation. But other people are not, in technical terms, ein adam choteh, kadesha yizke havero. You should not sin, I should not sin in order that other people benefit. Oh, it's correct and proper for me to do a minor sin to save myself from a greater sin, but it's incorrect for me to do a minor sin to save someone else from a major sin. Okay, that's the conclusion of the Gemara, having to do with the prohibition of Chochmah on Shabbos and Yom Kippur, for example, blowing the shofar and removing the bread from the oven. Over Oved l'rabo l'nagen l'tkoa. Think about it for a moment. A servant, an employee, a musician, a professional musician who could be an employee, works for his or her employer by playing a musical instrument. Surely playing a musical instrument is work. People get hired to do it. You pay a musician to do it. Well, if that's not work, what is? Why, oh, why does the Gemara say it's not malacha? Of course, it's work, and indeed, it's a whole profession. People study the profession, and that's how they make their money. They play musical instruments. Oh, l'sharat etzel tanur l'red tapito. What about the baker? The baker studied as an apprentice for a few years to learn how to take the bread out of the oven correctly. It's a lot of work. Not only is it a lot of work, he gets paid for it. Surely, surely these things that the Gemara designates as merely wisdom, acts of cleverness, and not acts of labor. Surely they are labor. People get paid to do it. Get paid a lot to do it. Aval, ein malacha. The things which the Gemara calls chokhmah are not malacha. What exactly is the distinction? Lefi she'eina min ha'davarim she'osim davar betikun dvarim hativrim. Chokhmah does not change anything in the world. Nothing physically changed. You performed music, but it's not a physical thing that you can touch and manipulate. The bread is still this. Is the same bread before it was taken out of the oven and after it was taken out of the oven. Nothing changed. Unlike the prohibition of cooking, where you change raw dough into cooked bread. Unlike the prohibition of cooking, where you change raw chicken into cooked chicken, a malacha changes something in the physical world. Chokhmah does not. It requires a lot of training and a lot of practice, and people get paid to do it. But technically, what excludes Chokhmah from the category of malacha, and therefore excludes Chokhmah from the prohibitions of Shabbat and Yom Kippur is that nothing is actually changed in the real world. HaShofar motzi kol va'rodeh monea shelo yitkalkel apat. The shofar merely makes a sound. The baker merely prevents the bread from being ruined in the oven, but he didn't change anything. Yafa amru, and therefore Chazal said, Kol meleches avodah lo tasu. Therefore, it says in the verse, meleches avodah lo tasu yatzu shofar urudias apas. These things, blowing the shofar and taking the bread out of the oven, which do not actually change anything, they are not malachot. Klomar, ilu ne'amar kol avodah lo tasu. If the verse had prohibited kol avodah, that would include musical instruments. Musicians, that's their work. That would include taking the bread out of the oven. Baker in the Near East, that's the work of a baker. But the verse doesn't say kol avodah. It says kol meleches avodah, and that is the distinction. Okay, let's go one step further. Mordechai, at the end of the period of the Tosafot in Europe, Tokint kia achas zeichel yovel. We blow the shofar once to remember the yovel, the Jubilee year. Exactly what the Smag rejected as a possibility. Dichtiv havat shofar says in the verse, you blow the shofar once every 50 years. B'tshuvot Rav Paltorigon, it says in the days of the Gaonim, Tokim b'shofar tekiah u'shlosha shvarim trua tekiah. It says in the Gaonim that they had a minhag not to blow a single tekiah, da, but rather da 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 da. So in Babylonia, the minhag was to blow a full tekiah, shvarim, trua tekiah at the end of Yom Kippur, and that was the minhag in both yeshivot in Babylonia. In Talmudic times, the two great yeshivot of Babylonia were in Sura and in Pumbedita. Those two yeshivas continued for centuries after the close of the Talmudic period, and those two yeshivas were the centers of Judaism in Babylonia, and in both of them, they blew the shofar in the same way at the end of Yom Kippur. Near L'Rav Yaakov Svar Sagon and the Rishonim who approve of this blowing of the shofar as a zecher of the Yovel. Mihu, however, it seems to me, the Mordechai says, seems to me, Kula Ketkanas Ravi Bahu Avdinin. You don't have to go so far as to blow so many sounds. Tkiya, Shvarim, Trua, Tkiya. You don't need so much. After all, why on Rosh Hashanah do we blow these sounds? On Rosh Hashanah, the source and the foundation of the mitzvah, the min HaTorah, the rule is as follows. You begin with a tekiah. Ta. Then you have a middle sound, and you end with a tekiah. Ta, 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 with another sound sandwiched in the middle. The sound sandwiched in the middle between the two tekiyahs is either a shvarim, da, 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 or a trua. Ta, 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 ta. Rambam and Rav Hai Gaon disagreed on the following point. Along came Rav Abahu, and Rav Abahu said, well, you should do both. Blow the shofar with a shvarim in the middle, da, 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 blow the shofar again with a trua in the middle, da, 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 and blow the shofar another time with both in the middle, shvarim trua. Why did he do that? Why did he say you should blow it another time with shvarim and trua? Well, Rambam and Rav Hai Gaon disagree as follows. According to Rambam, in the course of the generations, in Golus, because of the warfare and the constant displacement of the Jewish populations, in the course of the generations in the diaspora, they forgot what the proper middle sound of the shofar sounds like. Some people thought it was shvarim, da, da, da. Some people thought it was trua, da, 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 da. Along came Rav Abahu and said, do both to be sure, and further, so that there will not be divergent minhagim. Some communities doing only shvarim, other communities doing only trua in the middle. Everyone should do both together, shvarim and trua in the middle, so that at least all the communities will have the same practice and there won't be machlokas between them. This is the way Rambam understood things. Rav Hai Gaon disagreed. Well, Rav Hai Gaon was a bit earlier, but Rav Hai Gaon's opinion is different. Rav Hai Gaon held min HaTorah. It really doesn't matter which sound is in the middle. Both are kosher sounds. Min HaTorah, either a shvarim sandwiched between the tekiyahs, or a trua sandwiched between the tekiyahs. But Rav Abahu was bothered by apparent machlokis, disagreement in practice in different communities, and therefore he wanted to unify the practice. Everyone should be doing the same thing. Now these two opinions of Rashi, these two opinions of Rambam and Rav Hai Gaon lead to very different conclusions. Imagine for a moment someone who only knows how to blow tekiah and shvarim, but doesn't know how to blow trua. According to Rav Hai Gaon, you indeed can fulfill the Torah mitzvah even if you don't know how to blow one of the sounds. As long as you know one of them, you can fulfill the mitzvah of the Torah and therefore pronounce a bracha on blowing the one sound you do know how to blow. According to Rambam, well, we just don't know which is the correct sound. And therefore, if you're incapable of blowing the whole sequence, it's correct to blow the sounds you know, but no bracha, because maybe it's not the correct sound. Oh, Sha'alu Reb Yehuda. They asked the great rabbi, one of the Balei Tosafot, why is it permissible to blow the shofar before Havdalah? Two steps in Havdalah. One step is Havdalah in Ma'ariv, in the silent prayer of Ma'ariv, for those who daven Ma'ariv, not all women do that. And then the second step is Al Hakos, with a cup of wine. But before, you need some kind of Havdalah, either just the words in the Shemona Esrei or Al Hakos with a cup of wine. You need some declaration of Havdalah in order to permit working when Shabbos is over or when Yom Kippur is over. Well, why is it permitted then to blow the shofar before any form of Havdalah has been pronounced, before it's even permitted to pronounce Havdalah, because the stars haven't appeared yet? Hello, Asur Lasot Malacha Kodem Shi'avdil. Shouldn't this be prohibited? Yeshiv. He responded as follows. Vadai Malacha Asur. Of course, you're not allowed to do Malacha before Havdalah. What a shofar hochmehi. There ain't a malacha. But blowing the shofar is not a malacha, as we explained earlier. It's merely a chochma. V'lo ichmiru ba rabbanan kulehai, and therefore, once the sun has set, chochma becomes permitted. Afilu b'Rosh Hashanah shechal lios b'Shabbos eino asa el gezerah shema yitaltalana biyado yelech etzel baki. The reason we don't blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, which falls on Shabbos, the reason we prohibit blowing the shofar is lest you carry it through the public domain to someone who will blow the shofar for you. Well, this has nothing to do with blowing the shofar on Yom Kippur ben Hashmashot, and therefore it's permitted. The Tur says, Yesh noagim letkoa miyad achar tfilas ne'ila kodem arvis. In Spain in those days, end of the Middle Ages, many communities were blowing the shofar before Ma'ariv. Afal pisha dain lo avdilu, even though no form of Havdalah had yet been pronounced. It's okay, because shofar is not a malacha. It's only a hoch. It'll be better. It's advisable. Really, the right thing to do would be to delay blowing the shofar until after Ma'ariv, because at least in the silent prayer of Ma'ariv, you had Havdalah. But it's okay. But one should have that Havdalah first. And Tosafot say, Lo chashin and shema yelech etzel baki, we're not afraid. Like on Rosh Hashanah, which falls on Shabbos, when blowing the shofar is prohibited, because you might carry it through the public domain for an expert to blow it for you. Blowing the shofar when Yom Kippur is over, it's just a single blast. It's not so difficult. And the truth is, it's only a minhag. And if it would be omitted, so it's omitted. If you don't have a shofar, don't know how to blow it, there's no chashash. We don't have to worry that people are going to make an effort to carry the shofar through the public domain for someone to blow it for them as Rosh Hashanah ends. At this point, we can understand a very important point. Minhagim, such as blowing the shofar, which we've spoken about today as Yom Kippur ends, at the very end of Yom Kippur, this minhag and every other minhag, things which are not halachically required, require a justification. If you don't have a good justification for the minhag should be prohibited as a violation of Bal Tosif. There are 613 commandments in the Torah, and we're not allowed to subtract any or add any. Well, it follows, therefore, that any minhag, any practice which is not derived from a clear halachic mandate, is a violation of adding a mitzvah, like blowing the shofar when Yom Kippur ends, or subtracting a mitzvah if it's something like not eating rice on Pesach. Every minhag should be prohibited unless it has some good justification. And what is a valid justification for a minhag? A, a, the only valid justification for a minhag is that the minhag is a fulfillment of one of the real 613 commandments. If the minhag is a fulfillment of one of the real 613 commandments, then it's not an additional commandment which we are adding. It's just a way in which we fulfill one of the established mitzvahs. Every minhag must have some source in one of the 613 mitzvahs. Otherwise, it's simply prohibited as a violation of adding or subtracting a mitzvah. Now, Rav Hai Gaon and all of the others who taught us that blowing the shofar is a memory, a zecher of Yovel, what are they really telling us? If we blow the shofar on Yom Kippur to remember Yovel, that means they're teaching us to remember the Beit HaMikdash, because Yovel works, the 50-year cycle works only when the Beit HaMikdash is standing. Well, Zecher LeMikdash, remembering the glories of the Beit HaMikdash and the way the mitzvot worked in the Beit HaMikdash, keeping this in mind is a fulfillment of the Torah commandment, Mora HaMikdash. Being in awe of the Beit HaMikdash is indeed one of the 613 commandments. And therefore, Rav Hai Gaon and the others who taught us that blowing the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur is in order to remember the Yovel, in order to remember the way things were in the Beit HaMikdash, that inspires our awe of the Beit HaMikdash and is a fulfillment of that true mitzvah of the Torah. And according to them, the shofar should be blown when Rosh Hashanah ends, just like it was blown in the Beit HaMikdash to free the slaves once every 50 years, Tekiah Shvarim Trua Tekiah. According to the Tosafot and the others who taught us that blowing the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur is a signal. Now it's time to go home and eat. Now it's time to go home and have a festive meal. According to them, blowing the shofar is a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Havdalah. Just like in the days of the Gemara makes perfectly clear that before Shabbos, they used to blow the shofar. In my neighborhood, just about every neighborhood here in Israel, they blow the sirens to tell the people Shabbos is beginning. Well, back in the days of the Gemara, the shofar was blown. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho means doing something to mark the beginning of Shabbos and doing something to mark the end of Shabbos. Blowing the shofar before and Havdalah afterwards are two halves of the same mitzvah. The name of the mitzvah is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. And according to the Tosafot and the others who taught us that that's the reason we blow the shofar when Yom Kippur ends, it's in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Havdalah, marking the beginning and marking the end of Yom Kippur, which is, and according to this, a single shofar blast is correct, just the tekiah by itself. Okay, with this, I've concluded the survey of the sources. I'm going to pause with this. I wish you a good week and a safe week, and Gemar, V'hatima Tova, Yom Kippur coming up, and I open the floor to any questions that you have. Any questions?
Shalom, Rav Fink. Thank you so much.
Hello. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Is remembering Matan Torah a mitzvah that the shofar could be blown for as well? like
Yes,
the Katreg, defeating, and all these other, they're all pointing to mitzvahs.
yes, yes. And as I pointed out, depending which mitzvah it is, the way that you fulfill the minhag will change.
Are there any communities that do blow the shofar after Aravit?
Not to my knowledge, but I'm sure if you look long enough, you'll find. Okay. Tov, is Jody speaking? I don't hear her. Yes, Jody?
You hear me?
No. Yes, now I do.
Hello?
Yes, you want to
Can
ask
you
a
hear me?
question? Yes, I do.
Yes, oh, great. Well, this is not a
Yes.
question. This is just a tonight at a October 7th event. They one of the rabbis said that we blew shofar 100 times on Rosh Hashanah and there's 101 hostages, so he blew shofar
Oh,
to make
okay.
it 101 times.
Yeah, very nice. Okay.
Are Go ahead.
Yeah. No.
That's it. Okay.
I was
Oh,
just going
no.
to ask
Were you going to say something, Shmuel?
if most of the minhagim that we have today they're rooted in clear mitzvot from Torah. I don't mean
Yeah,
to stir
they
any
have to be.
pots, but I am curious.
Must be.
They have to be, and it might require some investigation to figure out exactly which mitzvah it is, but
Which?
there has to be a source.
Yeah. Amazing.
Got
It
it.
was really interesting.
All right.
Thank you. I think
Okay.
my two unrelated questions.
Yes.
On second day Yontif, somebody asked the question. They were going home, and then they wanted to change clothes and then go to shul for mincha, and then they were going out for the suda. They said,
Mhm.
would changing the clothes at that point be hachana for the second day of Yontif? That was on the
I,
first day.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so because they wanted to have the clothes for mincha as well. They therefore part of changing the clothes was for Yom Tov. This is a reason
Ah,
which probably applies in this case, but there's more to it. They asked Reb Shlomo Carlebach, oh, you don't know about this. In many Jewish homes, they have these small miniature versions of people. They're these small people run around. They call them children. And uh, if you visit some of these Jewish homes and see these children, you'll come to realize that getting them to sleep, getting them into bed and going to sleep is a whole process. The process of getting the children into bed and asleep begins a long time before they're actually asleep. So towards the end of Shabbos, you might want to begin the ceremonies of putting the children to bed, for example, putting them into their pajamas. That might be one of the first steps to get them into bed. They're not actually going to go into bed for another hour, which will be after Shabbos, but now we want to get them into pajamas. So Rosh Hashanah and most other great poskim who were asked about this said it's okay. It's okay. This is part of your regular routine. There's no simple way to get them into pajamas and into bed if you start the whole procedure after Havdalah, and therefore this is okay. Similarly, in the case you mentioned, there's no simple way for them to change clothes after Tzeta Kochavim. It's okay for this reason. Further, another reason it's okay is the Mishnah it's the first Mishnah in Masechet Beitzah. The first Mishnah says that if a chicken lays an egg on Yom Tov, the egg is muktzah. And what are you supposed to do if the chicken lays the egg on Yom Tov? Kofer alav kli, you're supposed to put a bowl over upside down to protect the egg so that it won't get broken until after Yom Tov. Behold, the Mishnah commands us to do something on Yom Tov to prepare for after Yom Tov. Why is this okay? Because there's no tirha. It's not great effort. The things which are prohibited because of hachana, preparing on Yom Tov for after Yom Tov, or Shabbos for after Shabbos, the things which are prohibited are things which involve tirha, great effort. The definition of great effort is given to us in Sefer HaParnas, written by one of the Talmidim of Rashi, in which he says there's some activities that people complain about doing, and other activities which people do without complaining. Anything that people complain about, that's tircha, that's great effort.
Amazing.
Things which people do without complaining, that's not called tircha, that's not called great effort. If I tell the grandchild, please take the garbage out, and they say, do I have to do it now? That defines taking out the garbage as tircha, something which is great effort. On the other hand, things which people do without complaining, it's not tircha at all. So, of course, this varies from person to person.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I see. So it depends on, okay, it's an individual thing then. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. My other question, quick question.
You tell children of a certain age, change your clothes. They might very well say, do I have to do it now?
So then they would be allowed to wait till after. The other question is, if you have vegetable barley soup, so you make ala mechia, and then what after bracha do you make? Does it depend on the amount of barley that you had, or is it the amount of soup with the barley in it?
No, it depends whether you're Hungarian or Lithuanian.
I am not Hungarian.
Okay. The Hungarian rabbis say you need separate brachot, and you make ala mechia and also borei nefashot rabot. The Lithuanian poskim say if in a typical mouthful you're getting a mixture, then a single bracha covers everything at the end. Those who do not have a specific school that they belong to, Hungarian or Lithuanian, should be advised in this case to follow the Lithuanian approach because it minimizes the number of brachot.
Right.
And the poskim always recommend, when in doubt, minimizing use of God's name in brachot. And therefore, those who follow the Hungarian poskim follow them. Those who follow the Lithuanian poskim follow them. And those who don't have a policy on this division should be advised to follow, in this case, the Lithuanian poskim.
But if it's barley soup, the after bracha is ala mechia, regardless of the amount of barley in the soup. I mean, if it's like barley soup.
Yeah, you have to eat a kazayat, toch gedei achilas pras. You have to eat a kazayat within around 12 minutes.
Of the barley or of the soup?
Barley. You have to eat barley, kazayat within 12 minutes.
Wait a second.
Very much.
So I have a different question about your barley soup. If the barley kernels are identifiable as individual kernels and they're not sticking together, it's a soup, it's not a stew.
It could still be by priyadama according to many poskim, correct.
Okay, and then in that case it would just be borei nefashot afterwards.
Correct, according to those poskim, correct.
Okay, just because that's
so what do we do?
Doing.
So it's mazonos on the barley and borei nefashot afterwards?
No. According to these poskim, it's by priyadama for the barley as well, because they don't stick together and each kernel is separate.
If it's a
so what do we
like
do?
barley and a chont,
and here too,
barley and a chont would be mazona.
Yeah, because they stick together.
But individual barley kernels, like individual rice grains that don't stick together, is hadama. It's not
mazona, correct. So again, those who follow whichever poskim follow them. Those who don't have a policy, which poskim they follow, could be advised to follow, in this case, the poskim will say Boi Pri Adama, because that reduces the number of brachot.
Okay.
Okay.
Just
Wow.
okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
So thank
Fink,
you.
do you
And
mind
I
telling
look
us a
forward.
bit about this Yom Tov idea? Sorry to cut you off. I didn't realize I didn't realize that Motzei Yom Kippur is the Yom
Yes.
Tov you were
You
saying.
should have a Suda. You should
Oh,
have a Suda Shel Simcha. Often called, people often call it the Suda of the Kohen HaGadol, because he used to go home and make a big Suda. Okay, but you should do it. Of course, you should do it.
Wow. Just that night? Is there
That night, the
something
night
for
after.
all of Yud Aleph?
Yes, you can have something quick to eat just because you're hungry, but in the course of the evening, you should have a proper meal.
Right. I was taught to call Yud Aleph Tishrei Gottstag, God's
Right.
Day, because we're
Right.
eating, because you take away from the Kitrug. Oh,
Mhm.
they weren't hungry anyway. That's why they fasted. No, I was hungry. I just, so you're eating on the 9th and you're eating on the 11th to show that when you're not eating on the 10th, it's only for Hashem. And so I was taught to call, as I was taught to call
Wow.
Yud Aleph Gottstag, God's Day.
Tov. I wish you a good week, as I said, and a safe week, and a Gemar
Amen.
Chatima Tova, and
Amen.
look forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing
To
you
all
all
too.
again in the continuation after the holidays. Until then.
Wonderful.
Amen.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Reb
Rav Fink.
Shlomo.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank
Shalom.
you.
Shema Tova,
You're
everybody.
welcome. Shana
Tov.
Tova.
Yeah, Nechama. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Jerry.
Shana Tova.
Bye.
Bye-bye.